This is an interesting contrast with Aisha, whose consent is not asked for. She's simply taken off the swing set, her dolls are with her, and she goes to Muhammad's house for sex. She's explicitly described as prepubescent and immature in Muslim sources. So,
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a video response to the Islam critique guy, aka Dumbo's video on Rebekah's age at the time of her marriage to Isaac. Now I'll be responding to the main part of the main video in separate future videos. In this video, I'm going to respond specifically to Dumbo's arguments at the end of his video regarding his comparison of Rebekah's marriage to that of Aisha radiallahu anha.
So stay tuned for those videos. In this video, I'm going to embarrass this charlatan by showing his complete incompetence when it comes to quoting the Islamic sources. So from the beginning, let me just say to the IC guy, dude, stick to your Bible, okay? You do a bad job defending a Bible, but at least you are familiar with it. Leave the Islamic sources because you have absolutely no background, no credibility when it comes to quoting the Islamic sources or Islamic scholars. So let's see why I think that, inshaAllah. Bismillah, let's begin. He claims that Aisha, her consent was not asked for. She was just a little girl. She was pre-pubescent, he claims. And he cites several hadiths, but he doesn't actually give the full text of these hadiths. And so we will see in this video how he's just a blind copy-paster. He is also a deceptive Christian apologist.
I know, I mean, they're like a dime a dozen nowadays. The deception of these people is amazing. So we'll see that now in this video, inshallah. The first hadith he cites is the one that says that Aisha was 9 years old when the marriage was consummated. This is well known. This doesn't prove that she was prepubescent, of course. So let's just move on to the next one.
Alright, so here's the hadith from Sahih Muslim that he quotes, only in part. It says that she was 9 years old when she was taken as a bride, and her dolls were with her. So apparently, according to this idiot, just the mere fact that her dolls were with her proves that she was prepubescent. Apparently, when you enter puberty, your first act is to throw out all your dolls, because who wants dolls, their childhood toys, with you? I mean, if we see it even in modern times, grown-up people having stuffed animals or dolls with them, does that prove that they are children? Are there such examples? Why, yes, there are. In an article from 2018
on psychologytoday.com, Dr. Joseph Berger talks about adult comfort dolls, where he discusses examples of adults having stuffed animals that they sleep with. He talks about an entire industry, actually. He mentions an American company called Hourglass, which makes comfort dolls for adults, and he considers this completely normal. So just because Aisha had dolls does not mean she was prepubescent. This is a pathetic non sequitur. And the fact that Christians blindly, uncritically repeat this same silly argument just shows that there's no critical thinking involved. There's no effort made at fairness and honesty. Right? Just because they see others making the same argument, they follow in their footsteps. There's the hive mentality. Just repeat the same argument, even if it makes absolutely no sense. So that's the first argument that's now out of the way. Okay, the second hadith that he quotes is actually also quoted only in part, and he only quotes the part that is actually not part of the actual hadith. Alright, so this is the hadith from Sahih Bukhari. When Aisha narrated, I used to play with dolls in the presence of the Prophet, and my girlfriends also used to play with me. When Allah's Messenger ﷺ used to enter my dwelling place, they used to hide themselves, but the Prophet would call them to join and play with me. This is the actual hadith. The rest of it, the part in the parentheses, is not part of the hadith. This is added by the translator from the commentary of Ibn Hajar. The playing with the dolls and similar images is forbidden, but it was allowed for Aisha at the time, as she was a little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty. Fath al-Bari, volume 13. Fath al-Bari is Ibn Hajar's famous commentary on Sahih Bukhari. So this is not part of the actual hadith. This is an explanation of the hadith. So what does this mean? Brother Waqar Akbar Chima provides an excellent discussion of this opinion of Ibn Hajar, and he concludes that this was just an error by Ibn Hajar, and he makes several good arguments. First of all, if you look at the entire quote from Ibn Hajar in full, we see that what he was trying to do was explain an apparent contradiction between the prohibition of images that we see in many hadiths and the permission of playing with dolls. So Brother Chima states, the focus here was not Aisha, neither her age nor marriage, but rather it was about an apparent contradiction between legal implications of the hadith on Aisha playing with dolls in the presence of the Prophet. Ibn Hajar did finally incline toward Al-Khattabi's view. It was more for the prudential reason of reconciliation rather than informed substantiation. Now, Al-Khattabi was the first one to suggest that Aisha had not yet reached puberty at this point. So Ibn Hajar inclined to that view, but he wasn't really sure. Secondly, Brother Chima writes, the report that Ibn Hajar used to date the hadith of Aisha playing with dolls using a winged horse appears in the works of Abu Dawood, Al-Nasai, Ibn Hibban, and Al-Bayhaqi. Whereas Al-Nasai's version mentions the Prophet ﷺ returned from a campaign, Abu Dawood's version involves doubt of a sub-narrator, whether the Prophet ﷺ had returned from Tabuk or Khaybar, and that of Al-Bayhaqi mentions only Tabuk. Alright, so there was some confusion as to whether this was around the expedition to the Khaybar or Tabuk. So Brother Chima concludes that Ibn Hajar was just made a simple error. This was possible. He's a great scholar, but a human being. So he made an error here, that's all. Not a big deal. And he also points out that Ibn Hajar contradicted himself in this regard. So he writes here, interestingly, while in the quote under consideration, Ibn Hajar sided with the suggestion that Aisha had not reached puberty around the time of Khaybar, which happened in the year 7 AH, so that'll be around 628 CE, when she would have been around 14 years of age. Elsewhere in Fath al-Bari, he dated the event of Aisha watching the Abyssinians sport in the mosque to the same year, i.e. 7 AH, and clearly stated that Aisha had by then reached puberty. He wrote, evidently this happened after Aisha had attained puberty, and it has already been mentioned that according to a report with Ibn Hibban, it happened when the delegation from Abyssinia came. It is known that they came in the year 7 AH, therefore Aisha was then 15 years in age. Alright, so Ibn Hajar clearly contradicted himself. He says in one commentary that she had not yet reached puberty, in another commentary he says she had reached puberty. So this is just a mistake by a great scholar, but a mistake nonetheless. But again, as we noticed before, this was not part of the original hadith. This was an explanation that was added by the translator, Muhammad Mohsin Khan. And Christians again blindly quote this, not realizing that it's not actually part of the hadith. And this is the next hadith he quotes, the chapter of a woman, the looking of a woman at the Ethiopians and the like. And here Aisha describes how she was watching the Ethiopians playing in the courtyard of the mosque until she was satisfied. And then in the last statement it says, so you may deduce from this event how a little girl, and then in parentheses it says, who has not reached the age of puberty, who is eager to enjoy amusement should be treated in this respect. Alright, so again, the Christian apologists blindly jump on this hadith and say, oh look, she's saying that she had not reached puberty. Well, no. The part that's in parentheses was added by the translator, which was again Muhammad Mohsin Khan. Alright, this is not part of the actual hadith. This is his interpretation of the hadith. And as we'll see in a minute, he actually contradicted himself in this regard as well. Now, if we look at the Arabic version of this hadith, and I know that charlatans like Dumbo don't know the first thing about Arabic. They don't have any even basic knowledge of Arabic. So let's give him an education here. Alright, the highlighted part is the part of the hadith where Aisha describes herself. So she describes herself as a Jariya, which, as we'll see in a minute, just simply means girl. And then she says, Hadithat sin. Alright, so what does that mean? Let's look at the dictionaries and lexicons to help us out. Okay, so the first word we're going to look at is Jariya. So as I said before, it just simply means girls. So I presented here two dictionaries that confirm this. The first one is Hans Weir Dictionary, which translates Jariya as girl. It can also mean slave girl or maid, but obviously in the context, Aisha was referring to herself as a girl. Lane's lexicon also says that it means a girl or a young woman, right? So it can mean both.
Hans Weir's dictionary states that the word hadithan simply means recently or lately, and then when it is combined with hadithat sin, right here, it means young. The word asin means age or years, so it's referring to young in years, right? So it could be used to refer to anybody who's relatively young, even a young child, but also an adolescent person. Right? In the case of Aisha, this is a perfectly reasonable description of herself. All right, now let's really bust this charlatan Islam critiqued, aka Dumbo. So we've seen that the phrase hadithat as-sin means a young woman or a young girl. There's no proof that it refers to a pre-pubescent girl. In fact, we're going to see a hadith that will conclusively prove this, and this will be really embarrassing for the Christian apologists who blindly copy each other and don't do any research, have no clue about Arabic, don't know how to research the Arabic, and they just repeat the same idiotic arguments over and over again. All right? So this is going to be embarrassing, guys. Brace yourselves. All right, here's a hadith from Sahih Muslim. Aisha radiallahu anha reported, we entered into the state of ihram for Hajj till we were at Sarif and I was in menses. All right, so menses means she was menstruating. And the Arabic word here is hidtu. And we'll see in a minute that means menstruation. In the same hadith, though, it says, I was a girl of tender age. Which phrase is used in the Arabic? Oh, jariyatun hadithatu sin. Subhanallah. So she is a young girl who is in her menses. And here we see from Hans Weir the meaning of the word hadat. Right? So hitatu is from hadat, which means to menstruate. All right, and here's Lane's lexicon, same root. It means she menstruated. So we have conclusive proof now that Aisha herself considered that she was a pubescent girl. She was young, Jariya, hadithat as-sin, a girl of young age. That does not mean she was prepubescent. So the Christian apologists have been absolutely demolished. And this is embarrassing because it just shows the pseudo-scholarly effort that is made. They're just repeating each other's stupid arguments. There's no effort made at honest research. So you should be embarrassed because this is pathetic how you repeat these stupid arguments. So we have now seen evidence that this hadith where she was watching the Ethiopians play says nothing about her being prepubescent. This was added by the translator. All right, he actually contradicted himself in this regard. Now we know that this event, when the Ethiopians came to Medina, this happened in the year 7 after Hijrah, or 628 CE. Aisha would have been around 14 or 15 at this time. We saw this before in the article by Brother Waqar Akbachima. Ibn Hajar's explanation himself, it said that she would have been around 14 or 15 years old. All right. The Khan translation added this phrase, who has not reached the age of puberty. All right, this is another hadith from Sahih Bukhari, narrated Aisha, the wife of the Prophet. I had seen my parents following Islam since I attained the age of puberty. Now, this translation, age of puberty, is incorrect. The phrase actually means age of awareness or age of maturity. So she hadn't reached the age of biological maturity at this point. Yet this obviously happened when Aisha was still very young. This was still in Mecca, whereas the hadith of the Ethiopians was in Medina. So how could she be in the age of puberty here, and yet in Medina in 628 she was prepubescent? So there's a clear contradiction. Khan, the translator, confused these hadiths. Right, so that is not evidence at all. Right, and we've actually seen the textual evidence that she was actually pubescent. Right, at this time when this hadith, right, about the Ethiopians, when this was happening, she was already well past the age of puberty. She would have reached puberty when she was 9. All right, and we'll see evidence of that as well in a minute, inshaAllah. All right, so this is the next hadith he quoted. This is from Sunan Abu Dawud, where Aisha was playing on a swing, and apparently this means to Dumbo that she was prepubescent. This is even stupider than claiming that playing with dolls makes you somebody who is prepubescent. We've seen evidence that that's not the case. There's an entire industry for adult comfort dolls. That doesn't make you immature. All right, so just because the mere fact that she was playing on the swing does not mean she was a child. This is again just a non sequitur. And furthermore, if this charlatan had bothered to look at the very next hadith, all right, in Abu Dawood, all right, let's look at that now. We see the explanation of Abu Dawood himself. He says, that is to say, I menstruated. So she was already pubescent at this time. Right? This is actually part of the hadith itself that was reported by Abu Dawood. This was his commentary, and he says that she was pubescent. She had entered puberty at this point. The other thing that the Islam critique guy said was somehow Aisha's consent had not been sought, that she was called over from the swing and she didn't know what was going on. So that doesn't mean anything. She was playing at the time her mother called her, and at that moment she didn't know what she was calling her for. That does not mean she didn't give her consent to the marriage. That would have happened before. All right, this is another non sequitur. All right, Aisha wasn't psychic. She wouldn't have figured out, oh, my mother is calling me because it's time to get ready for to move in with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She at the time she was doing something else. Her mother called her, and she didn't know at the moment what the reason was. But we know that she would have given consent because this hadith adds that when she went to the house, there were some women of the Ansar in it, and they got her ready. And they said, with good luck and blessing. All right, this is very similar to the story of Rebekah, where her family wishes her well and, you know, have many children and so on and so forth. So this is the same idea. These women are telling her good luck with your wedding, with your marriage. So she knows perfectly well what's going on, and her consent would have been given. If she didn't give consent, then she would not have moved in with the Prophet. She did give consent, though. This has already been established. So that's another foolish argument that Dumbo made. And lastly, we can look at this hadith that Dumbo quoted from Sahih Bukhari. I have never seen anything regarding Aisha which I would blame her for, except that she is a girl of immature age. Well, problem is that this is a very small part of a very large hadith, and this statement has been quoted out of context. You notice the ellipses, so this guy has cut out the important part, which just shows you the deceptiveness of the Christian apologist. So let's bust him again and make this worse for him, inshaAllah. So here's the hadith in context. Now this is, again, a small part of it. It's a much larger hadith. What he's talking about is the incident of the slander against Aisha when the hypocrites were spreading the rumor that she had committed adultery. So the Prophet was getting advice from his companions, and Ali anhu told him to ask her slave girl, Aisha's slave girl, and her name was Barira. All right, that's her name. And by the way, the word slave girl is also Jariya, as we saw before. So same word is used in the Arabic. And so the Prophet asked Barira, did you ever see anything which might have aroused your suspicion? This is regarding her alleged behavior regarding the adultery. And Barira replied, by Allah, who has sent you with the truth, I have never seen anything regarding Aisha which I would blame her for, except that she is a girl of immature age who sometimes sleeps and leaves the dough of her family unprotected, so that domestic goats come and eat it. So that's the context of the statement. She's saying that sometimes she falls asleep, she's young, she makes these kinds of mistakes. That's the only thing I have seen. The Christian idiots are suggesting that Barira was saying that Aisha was actually a pre-pubescent girl. Why would the Prophet ask her about that? Wouldn't he already have known that? I mean, just think for a second, Christians. Don't just blindly copy each other, because you make these kind of stupid mistakes and you look like idiots. Look at the context. She is a girl of immature age who sometimes sleeps and leaves the dough of her family unprotected. That's what she's saying. That's all she's saying. That's the only only fault that she found in Aisha's character. Alright, now let's look at the Arabic too, because this is the worst nightmare of the Christians, looking at the Arabic. Right? What's the Arabic phrase that has been used for a girl of immature age? Let's see. Oh, same phrase, jariyatun hadithatu sin, a girl of young age. So that doesn't mean that she's prepubescent. We've already seen the evidence for this. Now this is remarkably consistent with what Aisha herself has said about herself. So here's the previous hadith we saw. This is the longer version from Sahih Muslim. And you notice that it says again that Aisha had gone on Hajj and she entered into her menstrual period. So she couldn't make the circumambulation around the Kaaba as a result. But look at the ending part. All right, this same hadith, except it's a longer version. She said, I was very young, and I well remember that I dozed off. In other words, she fell asleep, and my face touched the hind part of the hodaj, the camel litter, till we came to Tanim. So this is consistent with what Barira also said, that the only fault she could find was that Aisha was a young girl, and she would oftentimes fall asleep at ill-advised times, which would allow the goats to come in and eat the dough of her family. So that was the only fault she could find in Aisha's character, that she was young, she was inexperienced, she fell asleep at times when she shouldn't have. This does not prove that she was prepubescent. And the Christians would be hard-pressed to find evidence that somehow prepubescent girls fall asleep at ill-advised times, whereas pubescent girls are perfect and don't fall asleep at those ill-advised times. Of course not. They won't be able to prove that at all. The only difference in this hadith, the longer version, is the word that is used for menses. Right? That word is fatamistu. In the other hadith, we saw a different word. Here, fatamistu is used, and that also means menses, as we'll see in a minute. And you can see here the same phrase is used by Aisha to describe herself. Jariyatun hadithatu sin. Here's the dictionary definition of the word fatismatu, which means to menstruate. Right? It means menstruation, menses, menstrual discharge. This is Hans Weir's dictionary. Here's Ling's lexicon, same root. It says she menstruated, so it has something to do with menstruation. Right? So this is, again, firm evidence that Aisha was not prepubescent, that the description of her as a young girl does not prove that she was prepubescent. In fact, it proves the opposite, because the same phrase is used over and over again in a situation where she was clearly menstruating. So she had entered puberty. There's no doubt about it. The Christians have been exposed as liars and deceivers and pseudo-scholars who don't do proper research. You should be embarrassed of yourselves. Your Holy Spirit has failed you.